Here's what's coming up on today's show.
You're going to have to be patient, meaning that there's going to be volatility because none of these things that the new regime is putting in place are in place. So it takes time for these policies to catch on and actually move us forward.
Trickle down, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to see some volatility while people are trying to figure out where their money should be, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
Man, lots of stuff to talk about. It's been, this been a busy week since the new administration has taken over. Lots to talk about. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the economic horizon, Craig.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. But first, my eggs have not gone down in the last 10 days.
Oh.
Have yours?
No, they haven't. But we have to remember, they also killed like 100 million chickens.
I just find it funny after 10 days,
months.
And that's all I can hear about are eggs.
I know, right? It's like you got to give some things
The guy's been there 10 days. Back off a bit.
Yeah. Takes a little time. Circle of life, right? Kind of thing, right?
So some of this is a little dry. I don't know how to make it any other way.
Okay.
So I'm going to go fast.
Well, we'll try.
And I will go ahead and do a call to action right now. If you want the research that we're sort of doing a broad brush on today, give us a call, 336-448-1086. Be happy to share the data with you. You can text us to 2025 at the same phone number. Our office phone number takes texts. And if not, try to find it on the website. I'll get it up there as soon as I can.
Yeah, we'll get it up there right away. But again, text 2025 2025 to 336-448-1086 or just give them a call. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's go to what we see might be on the horizon. And I'm quoting a lot of people here. So Jerome Powell, our Federal Reserve Chairman, Here's the formal thing that I'm going to read you. Telegraphed a slower and shallower rate cut narrative for 2025. Craig speak, he's probably not going to drop rates for a couple of quarters. Right. That's what he's really saying.
I think they said, 6, and then they went down to 4, so now he's saying maybe not even that, right?
I mean, he doesn't know either.
Right.
A lot of it is dependent on inflation. And honestly, a lot of it has to do with probably Donald J. Trump, because he's saying drop rates for me because that's a stimulus for the economy. So there's pressure from the Trump administration to move forward with further rate cuts sooner. You know, we'll see if he's accommodative or not.
Well,
the energy
sector is going to play a big part of that.
Yeah. Yep. So drill, baby, drill. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
All right. The updated Statement of Economic Projections, SEP, is indicating only 50 basis points. So in American, that means that somewhere in this year, that group is saying that the rates will decline by about 0.5%, for 2025. Inflation, which is a measure of personal consumption expenditure price index. Please forgive me for this. I have to read it. It's forecasted to be much higher at 2.5% in December of 2025, up from the 2.1 projection as previously thought. Mm-hmm. So disinflation, meaning inflation's not going down as much as they had thought.
Right. Okay.
He said most forecasters have been calling for a slowdown in growth, and it keeps not happening, which makes me laugh. Now, what does that say about America? We're a beast. This is an economic juggernaut. All you got to do is take the chains off and watch us roll. That's what I've got to say. There's no reason to think a downturn is more likely than it usually is. This is Jay Powell saying it. And he said, in fact, the U.S. economy favorably in contrast to the economic conditions in other parts of the world, particularly in Europe, where they may actually be entering a recession. This is not me speaking. So let's talk a little bit about interest rates, because this kind of, what we're saying is what's going to happen to interest rates. So if you think prior to 2022, you were getting interest rates sub 1%. Sub 1%. So you're buying a CD and losing rate to inflation. And now you're picking up, I don't know, on a 1 year, you're picking up somewhere between a 4.1 and I saw one for 4.6. I don't know the rates exactly. These are rates that I see when people talk to me about them, but that's halfway decent. But just remember this, if rates drop 0.5% this year, as they're calling for, next year it'll be 3.6 to 4.1. So you'll be getting a lower rate of return if you're doing something like a CD. So, although that's not a bad rate this year, that's a short-term thought. If you are looking at money you're not planning on using in the short term, maybe you need to extend your maturities. I don't think that the CD is the investment du jour. I understand that it's easy. You go to the bank, they make you a rate, your money's already there, they do it. But if rates decline this year, wouldn't it make sense to have interest rate bearing investments that'll pay their higher rates for a longer period of time? So there are strategies that we can talk to you about that will give you good solid rates of return, either tax-free or taxable. But at the end of the day, you probably need to stretch your maturities out some. So, although the primary pushback on the rate reductions has been stubborn inflation, that has kept the cost of goods much higher than we want. The Fed has a target of 2.1% in 2025. They've already pretty much stated, I doubt we're going to hit that number. So what are they going to do about it? They'll probably keep the rates up more than what some of the projections are. Now, with that said, nobody knows what they're going to do. They don't even know what they're going to do because it's all reliant on what the economy does and where inflation stays for this next 12-month period of time. If you look back at time, because I love this one, and people talk about, well, inflation's coming down. That just means that the already higher prices are starting to slow. That doesn't mean that you're actually getting a reduction in prices. So let me talk you through a couple of inflation numbers. So let's go back to 2018. 2018, the inflation rate was 1.9%. 2019, 2.3%. 2020, 1.4%. 2021, 7%. So that's the big whack. So rates, inflation went up 7% in 2021. 2022, it was 6.5%. 2023, 3.4%. So yes, inflation's coming down. 2024, 2.9%. So we're getting a reduction in inflation. We're not getting negative inflation and a reversal of costs so far, though. So please keep that in mind. The target is 2.1%. All right, so let's go to something better. The Trump administration's been moving very quickly in the last 2 to 3 weeks since they've got in, moving, and the Fed most likely is going to take a pause to changing interest rates to see if the combination of corporate tax reductions, personal tax reductions, along with significant deregulation efforts, and I say this, coupled with tariff tax on foreign goods, will be a stimulus to our country having more economic growth. So you think about this. I hear people saying, well, the stuff they're shipping over here is going to have a tariff on it, and it will cost more. Well, to me, we've been giving other countries favorable trade status for a long time. If our boys can start to produce and we're on an equal playing field, we can probably make those prices very competitive in a little while to make us not have to pay higher prices because there's taxes on imported goods. I just think that's important to say.
For sure. And a lot of the goods are things that you probably already have anyway. So you have to kind of weigh that in too. It's like, do you need a new phone every year that's coming from overseas, right? I mean, you probably don't, right?
Well, I like old cars. I like old trucks. I have an old truck. It's a 97. It's got 250,000 miles on it. Yeah. And I called a friend of mine and I said, I probably need a new motor. What would you do? And he said, well, most of the Chevy motors, which is what it is, are made in Mexico now. Mm-hmm. He said the steel's not as good. He kind of was negative on it. So he said, rebuild the motor that I have. Buy the stuff that says made in America because it's made better. And I'm like, okay, I'm good for that.
Right.
Let's look at economic growth. Some of it's going to be from reduced spending from the government,
which we've seen a lot of this week already.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, people that don't produce anything for the government are being brought to light and saying, if you are not productive, why are we paying you a check? So I'm sorry if that offends somebody. I don't mean for it to, but in my business, I have a small business. I can't afford to pay people that can't produce for my business. So that's just the reality of my life. When you look at labor and productivity, that could be a positive impact on growth in our equity markets, meaning that We're a more productive economy. We want to make sure that you understand our expectation is that the first part of this year, you're going to have to be patient, meaning that there's going to be volatility because none of these things that the new regime is putting in place are in place. So it takes time for these policies to catch on and actually move us forward.
Trickle down, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to see some volatility while people are trying to figure out where their money should be, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
I don't believe we'll see any rate reductions in the next couple of Fed meetings. So that's as far out as I'm looking.
Yeah, the first half of the year should probably be a little choppy,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Significant pressure to drop rates, but I don't think he's going to listen. He didn't last time, so I don't think I'm going to worry about that.
All right, Craig, before you take off again, we're going to get Cameron in here a little bit. So, Cameron, what's on your mind with some of this economic horizon? Some sectors?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the sectors that we're positive on, as well as some that we're not so positive on. So I'll start off on the overweight side. So ones that we are more positive on right now are the consumer discretionary space. So if you think your Ford pickup truck, a cruise line, those are discretionary items.
Okay.
Another one, financial stocks. Those look good to us. You got to be careful with some of the property and casualty stocks, though, in the short run. Communication stocks. So if you think your Fox, your Comcast, these are very strong right now. And on the other side of the coin, ones that were not very positive, so healthcare stocks. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure right now to bring down prices.
Yeah.
And, that's because they're too high right now.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
But going further, so basic material stocks is another one we're low on right now. And then lastly, energy stocks. We are definitely watching these very carefully, though. There's a lot of policies that are coming into play potentially that would generate a lot more demand from the AI sector.
Interesting. Yeah, especially
Just
with the
looking
energy
at
side,
sectors
right?
in general and
Yeah.
saying, where are we overweight? Where are we underweight to try to get a grasp on the things that we really like? A lot of people are very excited about technology. I am too. That's where growth is, especially with this artificial intelligence being added into corporate America. It increases productivity. It reduces cost. Things that in addition, though, to artificial intelligence, think about what we're going to do with space exploration. Our president said we're going to be on Mars. Wow. It's been a long time since we've gone out in space.
Right.
If you look at manufacturing for artificial intelligence, very impressive what this can do to increase productivity. Cameron, you're pretty smart on this stuff. I'm scared to death of it, to be honest with you. But when you look at manufacturing and say, how can this improve the outcomes? If you look at our business, I'm kicking and screaming going into AI, and he's like, Dad, look at this. This is so much easier than this write it out on a piece of paper thing that you're doing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm getting it, but it's slow for me.
Well, and it does have the blips. I mean, if you look at the time we're taping this, guys, right? So last Friday, the S&P was at 6,100. It opened up the following Monday, took a big old dive. But at the time we're taping this, it's right back to where it was the prior Friday. So,
Yeah,
and a lot of that happened to be
volatility.
NVIDIA, and it had to be AI, and it was around some of those comments, right?
Right. The reason why is they're overvalued.
Exactly.
It's not
To
that
your
they're
point.
not fantastic, because they are.
Sure.
It's just people are paying quite a premium to own those stocks.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I don't know, right after they split 10 for 1, everybody had to buy it. I had phone calls from people that would have never bought a technology stock in their whole life, and they're like, buy me NVIDIA. And I'm like, really? Yes, insisting on it. Most of them paid about $131 for it, and it really hasn't gotten much past that. It has a little bit, but it's not right now. And so when you're asking yourself that question, just understand, one of my mentors said, trees don't grow to heaven. It took me about 5 years to understand what that meant, but what he's saying is they don't go up forever.
Forever, yeah.
And so, everything has a good price to pay for it.
Yeah.
But as you look at that is a nice place to pay attention. Other things. You could buy the picks and shovels for AI, which I like a lot. Things like the electric utilities. AI takes a lot of energy.
That's a great way of wording that, Craig. I hadn't thought about the picks and shovels for that. That's very cool. Yeah.
I have my moments.
Yeah.
But, if you're looking at natural gas, that's the combustible material that makes the electric utility run right now.
Right.
I know it'll come from other things, but that's a big one. Nuclear, that's another one. Hate that one. But natural gas, is a big thing to look at. Will that backbone type idea be something that we can invest in going into the future? I said backbone, but when you look at technology, you have to have more than just a piece of software or a microchip. You have to have the whole connectivity of technology to make that work. So there's a lot of things to think about that you can invest your money in for growth and or for yield that will be great. If you look at the United States, if things are coming back here, you want to own some of the manufacturing companies. You want to own maybe some steel companies, some companies that make stuff here. And that should improve as the government focuses on America first. And if interest rates decline later in the year, that should impact our real estate markets as well due to lending costs coming down. Deregulation happening, energy cost improving, taxes declining, a pro-business government. And so look at that together and say, once and if this gets together and starts moving forward, America can be what it's supposed to be. Much of this is dependent on Congress being behind these efforts and not being some sort of quid pro quo political thing like it usually is. That's going to depress me a lot if I see that happen.
Yeah. Well, to the energy thing, let me just throw this out at you and see what you think about this real fast. So you're talking about AI and the energy consumption. Right. So a single Google search uses about 0.03 watt hours of energy. A ChatGPT or other AI commensurate search consumes about 2.9 watts of energy, right? So about 10 times as much. So yeah, when you start thinking about it in those terms, it's certainly going to be interesting to watch and see how both of those sectors shake out.
So I wonder how many watts a human body in the Matrix produces. I forgot.
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
The human brain is significantly less than
we got to check with Keanu on that. We'll have to get Keanu on here and have him talk about it.
All right, people.
Anyway, keep going.
So as we look forward, we are more focused on the U.S. economy than we are foreign right now. We are more focused on higher yield and extending our maturities than, just being in the short term for now. Well, 2 years ago, we were short term because we didn't know if rates were going to continue to be increased. But now that rates have sort of plateaued and are probably going to come down some, it's important to talk about your fixed income strategy. Having a mutual fund that buys all the bonds in the universe, that's an index fund, maybe not the best move. Having CDs that are super short term, a 1 year or less, yeah, you're going to be okay for a year, but next year, what do you do? So you might want to talk to us some, because these are things that as we're doing a real financial plan for you, as we're looking at how do we build a structure around you that gives you what you're going to need for return and what you're going to want for safety eventually when we get volatility. Those are two things that put together, you have a very strong portfolio. And then when you say, here are the things that I want when I want it. So Cameron's, what are you, 31?
Yep, 31.
31 years old. Here's a man that's not interested in retirement yet. He can't see it. So for himself, he's more interested in building a big fat portfolio. He's more interested in, maybe funding for the grandchildren I'm going to see one day.
Right.
Those guys, the guy won't get to work here. I don't know what he's doing.
Hint, nudge, nudge, right?
That was a hint. And so when you look at that, his goals will be different than mine. I'm older. And yes, one day I want my money to pay me, a different approach. So you have to look at where you are in life and say, how do I hit my goals? We had a person that came to us. He owns several pizza shops. This guy's killing it. He's making all kinds of money, but he's working all the time. Doesn't have time to think about how do I do this, that, and the other thing. And so we sat down, built this man a financial plan. Here's how much you have to save to get you to, I want to quit. Because he didn't have any understanding of how much he needs to save.
Gotcha.
Now we do. We put together a plan to help him see his future down the road. It requires a lot of savings. He's pretty young. He will get there. But hitting the ball every time he gets up at bat is what we want him to do, not make a lot of big mistakes and have to retrace. If you're closer to retirement, which is what I specialize in, then look forward. Say, I want this income level when I retire. Now, it will be different 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road because of inflation. Things cost more over time. So we have to make that number increase. And then the other part that most people can't put together in a financial plan is, what is it going to cost me from a tax perspective? Let's say that you're just piling that money full max into your 401k. You're getting a match on your 401k. So let's pretend that there's like $40,000 going into a retirement account every year, pre-tax. And let that money grow at a compounded rate of 7% for 10, 20 years, and you've got a nice big fat pile of money. If that's sort of you right now, I'd feel really great about that, except that we have no concept in the next 10 years what our tax cost will be to access that money and pull it out. So we need to start to look at plans. How do we have a strategy in place to get us where we need to be as efficiently, tax efficiently, if you will, as we can get there? So these are things that working with a financial planner, I mean, I'm a CFP. I'm proud of it. It was hard to get. And there are other people that are CFPs, and I'm proud of them too. But I think you should work with somebody like that or a team that has that on the team. So as you're looking forward in your future, build a plan, make a plan, and get it done. And then you can start to execute. The longer you wait, you're just guessing. I'm going to put a big pile of money together, and that should be good. That's one way to think about it. Or what do I need to save? Where do I need to put it? How do I handle my debt? Do I need life insurance? Is there long-term care something that I need to pay attention to in my future? Because I'm living that right now with my parents.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.